Hello, this is James Reese from Razorwire. Wow, 2020 is the year that just keeps on giving. I like to coin this segment as Coffee with Jim. It's 10th December. We've had quite a bit of interesting news this week, to say the least, in the field of infosec. But I mean, it's just crazy at the moment. I mean, we went into 2020. This thing called COVID was just starting to kind of gain some serious steam. I mean, it'd been around, the news had been around for a little while, but I think a lot of people went into 2020, hoping that this would be a really good year. And it was, to begin with, a very good year, and then of course everything went basically down the toilet. And it never kind of stopped going down that route. I mean, not just because of all the lockdowns and what have you, and I am drinking from the stolen Superman mug from Jamie. Thank you, Jamie, for that, by the way. But it just kind of went nuts in infosec. Why did it do that? Well, one minute everybody was sitting in an office working through their normal natural day, doing whatever it is that they do, no matter what sector they were in, and then all of a sudden, bam, lockdown hit, and all of a sudden everybody was working from home, or shortly afterwards furloughed, as the government in the UK kind of went into kind of deal with the rather serious situation that people couldn't actually do what they needed to do. So we had a massive furor of people rushing off, organisations rushing off and getting, kind of expanded VPN solutions and services, and going to kind of very much more remote services in order to cater for the stuff that they would normally have been able to cater for if it was kind of business as usual and people were in the office. Obviously, that trend continued and continued and continued and continued for months and months and months. Doesn't matter where you were really, whether you were in the UK, whether you were in the US or Europe or whatever. There was just the first part of the year, the first half of the year, I don't know, you could pretty much write off as a bad idea, really. It affected a lot of different businesses. It put a lot of financial pressure on a lot of businesses. The travel industry, good example of that. And around about the same time, we had all of these details of various different breaches, from, the EasyJet problem, the BA one, the Marriott one twice, and all of these industries were pretty much on their knees at the time and really didn't need that kind of PR. I mean, the breach had happened a little bit beforehand, kind of before all of it kicked off, but really when the word came out was at a time where things were getting really, really difficult. And the kind of trend continued. When you look at the list of various different organisations that have experienced breaches, the ones that have admitted to it or been in the news, or word has gotten out, most of it, a lot of it seemed to be things like ransomware, phishing attacks, that kind of thing. I mean, those types of attacks have kind of gone off the scale this year. They're all over the place. I've seen them, I've had customers coming to me with all kinds of targeted phishing attacks, people trying to get ransomware into the systems. And when you look at the news, it kind of just compounds that, and you get to see a lot of other people out there who've experienced this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden we get to December, and things take a really, really bizarre turn. And not really a turn, I suppose, but a couple of days ago, when I was going to start doing this particular piece, but I decided to hold off to see what kind of information we got out. FireEye, a very large cybersecurity company, admitted that they had indeed been hacked. Now, this is quite big news. For an organisation that's helping secure government institutions, you kind of expect this, especially from state-sponsored attackers. If you've got information on governments because you're dealing with governments, then it's likely other governments are going to feasibly, have a pop at you in order to find out some of the information that you're secure it. But FireEye, rather than kind of trying to hide it or keep quiet about it, actually came out and Kevin Mandia, the CEO, released quite a good memo on the website that kind of outlined very high level that they'd been attacked, they thought it was a state-sponsored attack, and the miscreants had gotten in and raided their portfolio of sort of hacking tools, that kind of thing. They probably went and tried to grab as much as possible, not just the hacking tools, there was probably a lot of other stuff as well. And we'll see over the next kind of weeks, months, however long it takes, maybe a little bit more out of FireEye as to really kind of what happened and some of the more detail behind it. I have to applaud them actually, because any other organisation or a lot of organisations in that same situation are probably going to be dubious about kind of putting the word out that they've been affected by this. But I think it's important, and I have to give them credit for this. We as information security people, we have to try to predict where threats and attacks are coming from. And security is very much based around the organisation. It's very individual for each organisation. Some organisations, have assets or digital assets, whatever, in one area and one set of concerns. Others have got them in others. Depends on the organisation where you are, and that's why I always say, learn the business, learn what's important to the business before you build your security program. Because there's no two organisations that are the same. They're not the same culturally, they're not the same technologically, they're not the same from a compliance or a governance level. So although you can apply certain baselines that you've experienced as part of your journey through infosec to similar kind of companies, never go in with right, this is what I'm going to do, until you've had a chance to really sit down and look at the organisation as its own entity, and then kind of build an appropriate sort of security around that. But I mean, that's leading me down a bit of a rabbit hole. The thing about FireEye is, they're alleging, and I will have to say alleging, because it can't be proved at the moment, that it was state-sponsored. And you know what? I kind of believe them. We in the infosec community know for quite a while now that there have been governments around the world that have been tooling up their cybersecurity divisions, to actively go out and compromise their competition, other governments, institutions related to those governments, providing services to those governments, to try and get information out of them. Only late yesterday, the EU Medicines Agency, and I shall click over to the tab to make sure I've got this right, has revealed that they've been hacked. Basically, somebody attacked them and tried to grab, or did grab, the details of the COVID-19 coronavirus that they're currently designing with Pfizer. Now, I firmly believe that that's probably state-sponsored, either directly or indirectly as well. That kind of information is extremely valuable. So there's plenty of, government organisations around the world that would pay a lot of money for that, or would actively go for that themselves. And it's really kind of showing a massive trend in the fact that a lot of our key institutions really need to sit down and re-review their security, especially after this year. We haven't had a chance as security people to really sit down and look at the impact that 2020 has done to our organisations. Or we've met, I know a number of people who have started to do it, but with all the financial pressures and burdens of trying to keep your staff employed, loss of business or reduction in the ability to conduct business due to lockdowns, due to having to furlough staff, due to people getting ill or losing people who have gotten ill as well. What's happened is it's been a bit of a perfect storm, and I think a lot of malicious actors, probably the best way to describe them, have taken real serious advantage of this. You know, they are usually very quick to take advantage, but I think in this case, it's been a bit of a, I don't know, it's been a bit of a perfect storm. You know, you've got everybody scared about a virus, and not a computer virus, about an actual kind of virus that's been infecting like crazy. Then you've got the people who are sending out ransomware and social engineering attacks, you know, which are going off the scale at the moment. I mean, the amount of HMRC scam calls I've gotten, good example, over the last couple of months, ridiculous. And that's my own personal, you know, number. I must do a video where I actually call one of these guys back and put it on video so you guys can hear, you know, some of the crap they come up with. But it might be quite interesting and fun, really. But needless to say, I think 2020 it's been a bit of a tough one. And what do we do? Where do we go from? As he says as he takes another sip of coffee. I think 2021 is the year that we're going to have to sit and consolidate. This is the year we kind of have to wake up a little bit, I think. Security has been an important aspect of business now for a number of years, but I think especially in the last year, with what's been going on, and probably the 2019 as well, because there were some massive hacks in 2019. There was some massive security events that occurred to a number of different organisations, quite big, quite key. I think all of this is really sort of pushing to make us sit down and say, right, what do we need to do? I think we need to look very objectively at some of the tools that we have, some of the services that we have, you know, renew our portfolio of information security solutions and services and update them to something that can cater for business as it's going to be in 2021, 2022 and going forward, which is, you know, a very decentralized kind of security model. You know, we don't have the ability to be as centralized as we were before, in whole or in part. You know, we're now starting to look at the fact that, you know, our perimeters are basically spreading out to everybody's front room, everybody's kitchen, you know, wherever our employees may be working. You know, they're working off of areas and network infrastructure that we don't have any control over. So there's going to be a much more focus, I think, and there needs to be, on looking objectively at our security models and updating them appropriately, looking at the endpoint, looking at encryption, looking at you know, solid VPN technology that's appropriately secured, looking at where our data's held, you know, encryption for data, data loss prevention, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of different areas and avenues that I think desperately need to be looked at. Multi-factor authentication, for instance, is a really good one. I mean, you know, I think we need to relook at biometrics. I think we need to look at the kind of the more behavioural, continuous kind of security countermeasures to make sure that the people who are logging in and accessing key systems are the ones who we want to be logging in, who should be logging in, the right employees, not somebody who's managed to grab their credentials due to, I don't know, a compromised system on their home network. You know, maybe the kids have downloaded something that's been sitting there, you know, happily sort of plugging away in the background, grabbing information, you know, trying to access systems. We're going to see a very, very different way that attackers are going to be attacking systems nowadays. You know, the unfortunate truth here is that criminals are very, very, very quick to adapt to a situation. You know, malicious actors are very quick to change the way that they operate and the way that they attack based off of what's going on at the moment. Information security people who work for organisations, you know, we're restricted by budgets, we're restricted by, you know, having to convince management why we need the money or the budgets or the time to really kind of change the organisation's security in order to meet the requirements of the modern day. And that's not an easy thing sometimes. Sometimes it's almost impossible, and you have to kind of look at what you can achieve and cater for the worst of it, and then build in a program whereby you can cater for the rest of it through, over time. Or even, if there's somebody saying, you're not going to have what you need, then you need to start planning and making plans of action as to what you're going to do if you do get compromised, and seeing what you can do. I've done a series of interviews recently with a number of sort of CISOs, CSOs, industry heads, pen testers, and the general consensus from a lot of those guys, both on camera and off camera when we've had discussions, is that this is very much a changing world. Where are we kind of going to be going in the future? I don't know. I can predict some of it, as I mentioned before, about the decentralization and the rise of the endpoint as being an extremely important area to look at. Centralized security is going to be still important, but more focused around a lot of the cloud and remote systems that are either going to be procured or currently are in development or being rolled out at the moment to cater for a workforce that's very much, decentralized, not working the same way that they were. Simple things like, for instance, user awareness campaigns. I deal a lot with that with the PCI DSS sort of customers that we have. I am a QSA. And one of those requirements is that you have multiple avenues for kind of education and awareness and security. Now, obviously you've got the computer-based training, you've got the emails, you've got the updates, that kind of thing, but a lot of them compound it with signs in sensitive areas of the business, reminders in the kind of coffee areas, the kind of relaxation areas, the meeting rooms, that kind of thing. Well, if we're not going to be in an office anymore, a lot of us, then we're not going to be able to do that. So we're going to have to really start looking a little bit more in depth as to how we're going to do this. It's all going to have to be done via email or via more, better CBT, security awareness training. But then people are going to be desperate to just get on with their own lives. So are they going to be paying attention to more advanced CBT training or emails that are coming in from the infosec department or whoever's dealing with infosec in your organisations? I don't know. There's going to be a significant culture shift. Just looking away from the technology, we're going to have to go and re-look at our policies, at our procedures. We're going to have to start catering for, if you've got a manager, a director, or you're an institution with a very, very high security posture as a requirement, how are you going to cater for the person who is sitting in a kitchen at home? What are you going to do about it? There's every possibility that somebody could just drive past knowing that you work for a banking institution and sit there, hack your local network, your wireless network that you're connected to, and use advanced hacking techniques to break into systems and start looking at the traffic that you're sending up or getting into your systems because you're on an inherently insecure environment. Routers that you get from the main ISPs, the level of security that they offer are extremely basic, really, really basic. Maybe it's time to start looking at ways to handle that, supplying people with little sort of hardware devices that can help secure their systems, their traffic, whatever, from being compromised. We're looking at a very, very different world from a security standpoint going ahead. Originally for this particular thing, Coffee with Jim, I wanted it to be a little bit more based around some of the more current events, but it's become something else now. It's become more of a wrap-up for 2020. I did want to do something like this, maybe with a couple of the people that we've interviewed and other people we know in the business, but I just wanted to kind of give my personal take on this, he says as he takes another sip of coffee. So where are we in 2020? Well, we're nearly there now. We're only a couple of weeks away. We've got the Christmas period, we've got the New Year's period. It's going to be a very different Christmas and New Year's, at least for us where we are down in Kent. And, yeah, I think everybody just wants to see the back of 2020. I don't think anybody would say they'd ever want to return to it. I mean, it's been horrendous. But 2021 is when we have to wake up. We have to get on with it. We have to talk to our organisations. You know, if you're an information security professional working in an organisation directly, you know, rather than a consultant who's out and about with multiple customers and multiple organisations that you deal with, it's time for you to sit down and communicate with the boss and say, right, what are we going to do about security? You know, we've had rapid changes in the way that we work. We've had rapid changes in the way that we operate technologically and logically. So what are we going to do now? We need to have some time, effort, and a bit of budget to be able to cater for that, because the attacks aren't going to stop. And if anything, they're going to get worse. You're looking at some of the stats that come out of some of the vendors that we have. And okay, some of it is marketing material, but you know, they do have some very solid evidence that things like sort of ransomware are much more prevalent than they were and getting worse. That hacks and attacks on systems are rapidly increasing. As I said, look at FireEye. I mean, FireEye have been done. You know, nobody is immune to a hack. You can't be 100% secure. But I can tell you now, you know, FireEye will have hopefully some of the best security you can think of, bearing in mind what they do. And they still got done. Now, I'm not going to criticise their security. I don't believe in that. And as I said right at the beginning, I like to applaud them for coming forward and saying, or giving some detail as to really kind of what happened. It'd be great to see maybe a little bit more, but then, you know, obviously you have to be careful. You don't want to compromise your systems again by telling people what you've done and how you've dealt with it. But, you know, kudos to you guys. I hope you recover from it. If anybody wants to reach out, and I'd love to have a chance to have an interview with somebody from FireEye to get some clarity and to see how you guys have handled it, and to provide a bit of guidance back to the community as to, you know, what went on. Obviously not providing too much information, but enough to sit down and kind of give us a little bit more. We're going to need it. Us infosec people will need to spend a lot of time keeping an eye on the market, keeping an eye on what's going on, keeping an eye on the movements of the malicious actors, how you know, the techniques they're using, because if we don't, we're going to get pwned, is probably the best way to describe it, from all different areas. And there's going to be a lot more security events. There's going to be a lot more organisations that experience, you know, very, very damaging security events. And to be honest, with the economy the way it is, and with organisations fighting for survival, there's every possibility that those, you know, successful attacks are going to spiral so far out of control that, you know, we're going to lose significant organisations due to not only financial issues, but having to recover from security attacks. It's very, very expensive to do that. Just the PR alone, you know. But what do we do? I don't know. I think I've shared enough coffee with Jim. My coffee's going rapidly cold. I'd like to do a few more of these. I think next time I'd like to maybe get some of the people that we've interviewed. If you're an infosec person, you want to be involved, then please feel free to reach out. It'd be great to sit down and find out a little bit about yourself, your organisation, your experience in infosec, so you can help kind of guide the next batch of infosec people, or the people looking to get into the market, as to what to look out for in this game. Or, you know, maybe we'll have a discussion about the product, or a focus on sort of technology that's up and coming that we need to consider. You know, we're keeping this channel very, very open. So look after yourselves. We will be releasing a number of bits of content over the next couple of weeks. We've got a new website going live, hopefully on Monday or Tuesday. So we've been holding off with some of the release, but you'll see a significant uptick in output over the next couple of weeks leading up to Christmas, when even I am going to be having some time off. I haven't had it for years, but certain people in my life have said I have to, otherwise bad things will happen. And you know what? I need the time off myself. As I said, 2020 hasn't been kind to everybody, or anybody really. So be cool, look after yourselves. Please feel free to subscribe and press the little bell so you get notifications when we produce more content. If you want to get in touch with us, please look in the description. You'll see contact details, how to get in touch, and ask any questions that you have. If you've got any content you want us to cover or anything that might be of interest, then again, please feel free to get in contact. But this is Jim signing off to go and get another coffee, a fresher coffee, in a mug that I stolen from one of my colleagues. So be cool, see you soon, look after yourselves, and bye.